right, another week goes by and Gozyuger continues to be a fantastic series, this time with episode 20, titled Serious About Garu. Otto changes her character, which in Japanese it has a sort of pun on the theme of the ranger that's introduced in this episode, where it's titled Garu no Shinkan Otto wa Kaira Hen, which this week's episode had the Universal Warrior of Shinkenger, so of course you got Shinken in the title there. But this was another really great episode, as we're setting it up for another story arc, or a little mini story arc within the series, as we're finally introduced to Sumino's sister. Now, watching this episode, I thought there was going to be some kind of fake out or some kind of twist when it came to her sister, like it wasn't her the whole time because, you know, she was acting like a completely different person. So I wondered if it was like a no one or some kind of AI that Kyun created or something like that. But that wasn't the case. This was like genuinely her sister. So the whole theme of this episode is that Garu themed monster attacks, which, if you know the Garu culture and the fashion over there in Japan, kind of a big thing. I think it's still a big thing over there. I don't know. But it was a really fun, wacky, zany episode where you have Sumino's sister, known as Otto, and she's the number one Garu, and her theme is Shinkenger, or she's the Shinkenger Ranger with this week's episode. And she's got a ring power that is able to sort of do the painting stuff that the Shinkengers do, but when they change colors, it's able to sort of change their sort of emotions and feelings. And the vibes I got from that was from Miss Golden Week in One Piece, where different colored paints made them feel different emotions and stuff like that with different abilities. So you have the Rangers in this episode, and you have the Green Ranger and the Blue Ranger. They get Garu'd, and they've sort of got this brand new fashion trend, and it was really funny seeing them sort of dress up in these fashionable outfits. But the other Rangers start taking Garu lessons in this episode, where they sort of learn to talk and act like them, and that was really fun in that episode as well, where they're having the big classroom lesson, and you've got Horu sort of being enamored by the lesson in the episode, and he's like sort of taken back by everything, going, oh, this is pretty cool, I do like all this stuff. And that was a lot of fun. So one of the big things we learn with Sumino's sister in this episode is that she has to be wearing the Shinkenger ring at all times, because if she takes it off, she goes into a coma or she goes into a deep sleep, which is something we learn in this week's episode. But also in this week's episode, it was also brought up, and I kind of forgot about it because, you know, it was only brought up once when Sumino was first introduced, and that was that her sister was taken away by someone with grey eyes. And then the plot twist at the end of that week's episode, or that episode, was that Byakuya had great grey eyes at the end of that week's episode. And in this week's episode, we actually have the two interacting about the grey-eyed stranger that took her sister away. And Byakuya's reaction to that is that he has some kind of look of concern or worry on his face when she brings it up. So I do wonder what that's all about, and if we'll sort of get an answer about that, because, you know, he seemed a little bit jittery when it got brought up, and he tried to brush it off and act like, oh, a grey-eyed man, that's interesting. So we'll see where that goes, because I don't think it was Byakuya. I feel like the Byakuya stuff was a red herring, but he wasn't the one who did it. I don't think it was him. If it was him, then I do wonder where that twist is going. But also in this episode, you've got the bad guys. You've got Fire Candle, who is sort of in trouble that he's not collecting rings, because, you know, you had Bouquet collecting rings, and June Queen was like, okay, how come you're not out collecting rings, Fire Candle? And Fire Candle's like, oh, I'm collecting rings, but I'm collecting them from the Gozyugers. That's the rings I'm collecting. And she's like, well, you better collect rings. So I was wondering where that was going to go, but they did actually follow up on it. So in the episode, you had the Rangers facing off against the Garu monster, and that was a lot of fun as well, because after all their training, you see them in civilian form in Garu outfits, and they looked really silly, really wacky and zany, especially the guys where they were sort of dressed up as girls, and that was a lot of fun, especially with how bombastic their Garu outfits were. I think that was a lot of fun. Not only that, with the actors sort of using the Garu sort of dialect. Also, one of the scenes that with the training that they do, there's a scene where Otto is sort of teaching them, saying, oh, when Agaro says precious, they say presh. And then you have Ryugi saying take a sword is presh, and that got a laugh out of me, especially when all the other Rangers are sort of learning the slang, like the Green Ranger as well, Kinjiro, by saying DD and GG and stuff like that. That was a lot of fun. But I get the feeling that there was also a Mega Ranger in this episode, Mega Ranger reference in this episode as well, because of the phone. But not only that, there's a text message that she sends to one of sort of the henchmen, one of the minions, is that they sort of say surf the net Mega, which I believe is one of the lyrics in the Mega Ranger opening, or sort of like the initial theme of Mega Ranger. So I feel like that was meant to be a Mega Ranger reference in there, but like they didn't sort of lean on it too much in the episode. So I feel like that's what they were going for. So you have Sumino learning to embrace her Garo side, but not only that, learning to embrace who her sister is, because in the episode she thought that this wasn't her sister because she wasn't acting the way that she remembered her sister, but the whole lesson that she learns in the end of the episode is sort of embracing who her sister is now and sort of living in the moment as well. So that was a really nice touch in the episode. So the two come together and they work together and they defeat the monster of the week in the end. So at the end of the episode, the big cliffhanger at the end is that Fire Candle, he's basically camping the Rangers, and after they defeat the monster of the week, he basically goes in to attack the Rangers and decides to steal one of the rings, and he targets Otto. But you have Suna jumping in the way trying to protect her, but it's not enough. She gets hit by the attack, and she demorphs, and her ring falls off. And because her ring falls off, she goes into the coma, and then you have Fire Candle end up taking the ring for himself. And I feel like Fire Candle taking this ring for himself is such a fitting ring for the character because of the powers of Shinkenger with fire and stuff like that. Because, you know, Fire Candle, Fire Ranger, Fire Samurai, I feel like those powers really suit him when he's going to use them. I feel like that's really going to be freaking awesome. So I hope there's like more fire-based ranges where you can have Fire Candle using those powers. I feel like him using like the Die Ranger red powers would really suit him as well. I feel like that'd be pretty cool as well. But Fire Candle transforms into Shinken Red, so it looks like that's going to be one of his forms as well, which I was not expecting him to actually take on a Ranger form in this week's, like, at all. I never assumed he would take on a Ranger form. I just thought that he would sort of be in the civilian form where he'd fight the Rangers. So I do wonder if characters like Boquette will take rings as well, and she'll have a form as well. No idea what Red Ranger would suit her with her sort of motif going on, but we'll see what happens. But the big cliffhanger is that you have Otto passed out and Fire Candle has stolen her ring, and we'll see where that's going to go in next week's episode. But overall, this was a really good episode of Gozyuger. I'm loving this show week to week, and I can't wait to see where it's going to go next. So with that said, I'll catch you guys later. Peace out. Take care. Bye.